Die of Death is a game that I've really gotten into lately, and I honestly think this game is 10 times better than Forsaken, despite being a parody of that said game. Die of Death is genuinely more fun and also balanced than a majority of asymmetrical horror games on Roblox. However, that doesn't mean the game doesn't have some rough spots in terms of balancing. The biggest example of bad balancing in this game is the killer Artful. Artful is a really poorly designed killer who is also the absolute worst killer in the game. So in this video, I'm going to explain why he's so weak and why he needs to be buffed. First of all, and probably most importantly, let's look at Artful's stats. Artful has a base walking speed of 9 and a sprinting speed of 26, which aren't very good, but you may be thinking that those stats aren't that big of a deal, and Artful has something to make up for them. But that isn't true. Not only does Artful have pretty bad sprinting speed, but he also only has 90 stamina. This is Artful's biggest flaw, undeniably, considering he has less stamina than 90% of the civilians in a game all about stamina management. The only civilians that Artful can have a chance at catching up to without being assisted by one of his other abilities are civilians using the revolver or civilians using the hot dog that have eaten it twice or more. This makes it to where Artful is almost completely reliant on his abilities to do any amount of damage to the civilians, which would be fine considering most trapper killers are like that in asymmetrical games, but Artful's abilities aren't that good either. Artful's Q ability, Implement, allows him to build a wall that can block off certain doorways to civilians, which can heavily limit where they can go, allowing Artful to potentially deal high amounts of damage. But most of the time, there's not enough good spots on the map to place a wall. Civilians with Sentinel abilities can also interrupt you while you're building a wall, which will completely cancel out the ability. Even if you do manage to corner a civilian in a place where you can actually use Implement to trap them, they can simply run past you while you're building a wall. In a server with competent civilians, Artful will basically never get to successfully trap somebody with Implement. The only time Implement actually works is against new players that don't know how to counter the ability. Artful's E ability, Copyright, is certainly better than Implement, but not by too much. This ability makes Artful place down a music box that slows down and reveals the aura of civilians in its radius. There are actually a lot of good places to put down a Copyright on many maps, but just like with the Implement ability, survivors can cancel out the ability with a Sentinel ability during the windup. The slowdown of the music box can also be completely nullified if a civilian places a speed boost pad right by its radius. The radius for the music box itself is also pretty small, so if the Artful isn't actively chasing you, it doesn't change hardly anything, even if it does reveal your aura. Lastly, Artful's R ability, Repurpose, is a very strange ability that allows Artful to take either one of his own walls, one of his own music boxes, or a civilian and then repurpose them into a new ability that can be used by using the repurpose ability again. But if I'm being completely honest, these additional abilities suck. If Artful repurposes one of his own walls, he can throw a brick that deals 15 damage and has a small amount of splash damage upon impact. This ability is kind of like Cool Kid's Corrupt Nature from Forsaken, but it breaks on impact and can't travel through walls, and also can't be aimed vertically, but it's also a lot faster and has a splash radius. But regardless, this ability only does 15 damage, even if it is a fast projectile. Landing it basically does nothing unless you land it on a care pad, which is one singular type of civilian in this game. The splash radius doesn't even matter, and I don't think I would even know it exists if I didn't read the description of Repurpose. If Artful repurposes one of his own Copyright music boxes, he can give himself a small speed boost for a decent amount of time. This ability also isn't very good because the speed boost is barely noticeable and it does not make up for his 90 stamina in the slightest. and also it takes pretty long to place down a copyright music box and then repurpose it just for a mediocre speed boost. I honestly think it would be faster just to not even bother because the speed boost doesn't change that much, and honestly it's a waste of time. Lastly, if Artful repurposes a civilian, he can summon a puppet that chases around civilians and will attack them and deal 15 damage. This is honestly the worst ability you could use with Repurpose, because not only is it pretty difficult to actually land a Repurpose on a civilian, the reward you get from it is worse than the other two Repurpose abilities. The puppet is pretty slow and only does 15 damage per attack. It's honestly the least threatening thing in this entire game. Okay, so with all of this being said, there's obviously a lot to be buffed about Artful, so I'll try to summarize what I think needs to be changed here. First of all, his walking speed and sprinting speed are totally fine for a trapper killer like this. The problem is his stamina being only 90. No killer in this game should have less stamina than the average civilian, unless they have abilities that have absurd mobility that allow them to catch up easily. If it were up to me, I would honestly just buff his stamina to 110. Implement should just be slightly faster so it can actually trap people without them simply running past you as you're building the wall. And also all of the maps just need more spots that Artful can easily block off with walls. If you've ever played on glass houses as Artful, you would understand where I'm coming from with this. Copyright is also okay, but it just needs a slightly larger radius, and its slowdown shouldn't be able to be nullified by a boost pad speed boost. Repurpose definitely needs the most work out of all of his abilities because the 3 repurposed abilities you get from it aren't very good. The wall projectile should deal a lot more damage and also have a larger splash radius. The music box speed boost would honestly be a lot better if Artful just had more stamina. And the puppets should be a lot faster and deal a lot more damage, so they're actually somewhat of a threat and actually worth the effort required to pocket a civilian. All in all, Artful is a really weak killer that has less stamina than a majority of the civilians in the entire game, and also has very sluggish abilities. His repurposed abilities also aren't very strong, and don't help him catch up that much because they still don't make up for his lack of stamina. And one last thing, he's French. That's all I have to say. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section, and goodbye.
I'm gonna touch you non-consensually.
Bro. I just recorded that. You're fucked.
No, no.
I don't know, losers. Ah!
Like, I got nothing. Never mind.
Heinous. I've even like more heinous things. So.
All right, honey T, don't die instantly. You gotta follow me, bro. Follow me.
Freak! I can't jump. Why can't I jump? Is there a stamina bar?
Oh my god! Look out!
Yo, I'm about to touch this game, bro. Moderate.
Yo, just get a moderator. It's not that hard.
Wow, a moderator is not gonna help me fix the situation where I connected a keyboard and mouse to a console.